Obsolete infrastructure. That's what he called me. I was halfway through updating a compliance audit sheet when the video feed crackled to life. And there he was, Blake, 29 years old if we're being generous. Probably the kind of guy who used disruption in casual conversation and thought PowerPoint animations were revolutionary technology. The CFO introduced him as the optimization specialist, which is corporate code for executioner with a business degree. Tanned, veneered teeth gleaming, styled like he'd Googled executive haircut 2024. "Hi everyone," he said, flashing the kind of smirk you see on guys who still quote The Wolf of Wall Street unironically. "I'm here to modernize operations and eliminate workflow inefficiencies." His eyes landed on me through the screen like he was calculating which old furniture to donate first. I didn't flinch, just clicked save on the folder I kept with every licensing document, federal renewal timestamp, internal compliance chain tied to my name, labeled it Weekend Pottery Class Notes, and backed it up to a private drive. Veronica Nash wasn't going out like an amateur. By lunchtime, I heard him in the break room joking with two junior analysts about retiring legacy systems. "I'm 41, not legacy, but in Blake's world, if you don't have a TikTok strategy for quarterly reports, you're extinct." Then came the all-hands meeting. Everyone cramped into the conference room like it was a séance for common sense. Blake pulled up a slide deck filled with nonsense phrases like dynamic compliance framework and integrated accountability matrices. I watched 3 interns nod like they were witnessing the birth of artificial intelligence. "Some of our team members, especially those managing outdated protocols, will be evaluated to ensure compatibility with our streamlined approach," he said. Then, staring directly at me, "We value your institutional knowledge, Veronica." Institutional like I was a museum exhibit gathering dust. I didn't say a word, just smiled. The kind of smile you give when someone steps into quicksand you've been mapping for years. If you're watching this and haven't hit that like button and subscribe, help a sister out. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers. 95% of y'all listen without subscribing. Just one click and you'll make this storyteller's day. Drop a comment too, let me know where you're watching from. Alright, back to the corporate carnage. That night, I stayed late, not because I had to. I wanted to watch the system hum like a mother checking on her children before the babysitter arrives. I double-checked my credentials across 4 federal platforms. Active certification, renewal authority, licensing PIN, and audit clearance, all tied to my biometric signature. I made sure the timestamps were current. Then I printed my contract addendum, the one nobody ever reads. Section 9D. In the event of involuntary separation, all company-funded licensing responsibilities and regulatory certifications shall be considered void, and all credentials will be formally revoked within 72 hours of contract termination. Nobody noticed when I left the building. But I noticed the way Blake's eyes tracked me that morning like a hawk watching a mouse, not realizing the mouse had access to air traffic control. You ever see a man mistake dynamite for birthday candles? You will. By next Wednesday, Blake had installed a whiteboard in the break room with Innovation Tradition written in aggressive red marker. The handwriting looked like a caffeinated teenager's. Then came the real entertainment. Everyone, absolutely everyone, was told they had to re-interview for their evolved position. It was packaged like a team-building exercise, like we should be grateful for a chance to audition for the same job we'd been doing competently for years. One by one, people shuffled into the conference room like defendants heading to sentencing. The newer hires emerged beaming, spouting phrases like "Blake really understands me" and "he's bringing revolutionary thinking." I wanted to tell them that kind of revolution usually involves heads rolling. When my turn came, I didn't bring a portfolio. I brought silence. Blake barely glanced up from his tablet. "Veronica, you've been here a while." 11 years, I said. "Cool as ice water in hell." "Right. Historical perspective. We appreciate that." His fingers swiped across the screen, probably updating his LinkedIn with legacy workforce management. He pulled up a half-finished org chart and pointed at a box labeled regulatory oversight. Under it, my name struck through. Next to it, position under review. Then he opened a tab labeled Q4 Certification Transfer Plan. My eyes caught the file name, Q4_license_redistribution_V2. In the comments, can these responsibilities be delegated downstream? Downstream in Blakespeak meant dumped onto someone too inexperienced to spell OSHA. I smiled, didn't twitch, but inside, warning bells started clanging. When I returned to my desk, I opened the database I'd constructed from the ground up in 2017. The one that tracked every compliance certificate, its expiration date, which regulatory body it reported to, and who held signature authority. There were 47 items on the list. 47 licenses. 47 pieces of red tape woven together into one tight corporate lifeline, and all of them connected to me. I exported a fresh copy of the log, encrypted it, compressed it, renamed it Book Club Reading List, and emailed it to a personal account. Then I purged the recent items. Call me cautious, but I've seen what happens when children play with industrial equipment and call it progress. Later that afternoon, he reassigned my inspection preparation to a social media coordinator who thought FDA stood for Federal Design Authority. No exaggeration. She asked if that meant updating the company Instagram with food photos. Meanwhile, I was tasked with organizing the supply closet. He said it would keep me connected at a grassroots level. Grassroots like weeds. I asked politely if I still had administrative access to our licensing portal. Blake blinked like I'd just spoken ancient Greek. Oh, I think we transferred that to Madison last week. You don't really need it anymore, right? Madison had just discovered what a spreadsheet was. I didn't argue, just nodded, logged into a workstation down the corridor, and revoked her access from the shadow administrator panel I'd never mentioned to anyone. If I was getting pushed off the island, I wasn't leaving the treasure map behind. I walked past Blake's glass-walled office later that day. He was laughing on a call, something about cleaning house. He didn't notice me observing, but I noticed something. The fuse was getting shorter, and the air smelled like smoke. The first time I heard them snickering, I let it pass. It was 3 of the junior associates, fresh from college, still damp behind the ears and drunk on borrowed authority, hovering over a printout of my old compliance flowchart like it was cave art. This thing uses color coordination like it's arts and crafts, one snorted. Another added, she even date stamps everything by hand. Has she heard of automation? They were clustered near the water cooler like a pack of overconfident chihuahuas, sipping kombucha and dropping buzzwords like agile methodology and AI integration, as if those phrases had ever prevented a federal shutdown. I walked past with my head up, but my jaw clenched. By Thursday, I'd been locked out of 5 internal systems, 3 of which I had built. No warning, no help desk ticket, just a red 403 screen and a pop-up that said, "Contact your system administrator." Plot twist, I was the system administrator, or had been. I emailed IT. No response. I tried calling HR. The voicemail was colder than a Minnesota winter. Finally reached a human after 6 attempts. They said, "Sorry, Veronica. All HR inquiries now route through your department head." That's Blake. They said it like they were announcing the second coming, but with more hair gel and less salvation. I didn't respond, just hung up and stared at my monitor, blank but glowing. I'd been severed from every meaningful interface in under a week. No explanations, just streamlining. Blake was clever in that dangerous MBA way. Never smart enough to create something, but just clever enough to know how to destroy it under the guise of policy updates and restructuring memos. He'd started dropping little bombs into his weekly reports to leadership, legacy processes under evaluation, potential staffing redundancies identified, outdated certification management flagged. That last one was precious, like you could make redundant a federally mandated authority signature tied to my biometric identification. I'd become a walking paradox, officially employed but strategically erased. So I scheduled a 15-minute appointment at a notary office, quiet little place above a coffee shop on Elm Street. No fanfare, just me, an uncomfortable chair, and a form titled Voluntary Relinquishment of Licensing Authority. I didn't sign it yet, just had the option notarized. A loaded gun tucked into my briefcase in case negotiations turned ugly. Afterward, I walked back to the office with a vanilla chai and the deadest expression you've ever seen. Blake passed me in the corridor and said, "Hope you're feeling more synergistic this week." I nodded. "Just finalizing some details." He smiled. That corporate reptile smile you'd find in the business section next to winning at all costs and a motivational poster. What he didn't know was that every detail I finalized came with a countdown timer. And I had the detonator. It happened on a Tuesday. Because naturally it did. The kind of Tuesday where the air in the office feels like recycled desperation and everyone pretends they enjoy their jobs just enough to make it through another day. We were all assembled for Blake's new weekly synergy session, which was basically a TED Talk for narcissists. He stood at the front of the open concept workspace in his fitted charcoal blazer and made that hand-spread gesture like he was blessing a congregation of sheep. "Let's begin with some transparency," he said. "That's how you always know someone's about to execute you publicly, when they lead with transparency. We've been conducting significant evaluation over the past few weeks." He continued pacing like he was about to sell us extended warranties on our careers. "While experience has merit, resistance to change is toxic." He stopped directly behind my chair. I didn't turn around. "Unfortunately," he said loud and clear, "certain traditional roles no longer align with our progressive trajectory." People started fidgeting in their seats. Some studied the floor. A couple glanced at me. One in turn tried to maintain a supportive smile like this was standard procedure, like we were just watching someone lose their parking privileges and not their livelihood. Then came the execution. Effective immediately, Blake announced, "Veronica Nash's position has been eliminated." No warning, no meeting, no private conversation, just a sentence delivered like a weather report. I stood up, not because I was shaken, but because my legs felt too solid for how much they wanted to launch him through the window. HR materialized, two of them, both young, both avoiding eye contact, approaching with a glossy folder like they were delivering last rites. I took it, opened it, flipped to the termination agreement. No severance, just legal jargon and a signature line. I pulled a pen from my own purse, signed it in one fluid motion, then said, "I'll need a physical copy." Blake blinked. "It's all digital now." "Physical copy," I repeated. HR hesitated. I waited. 6 minutes later, I walked out of that office with a paper copy, a stamped receipt, and the composure of a woman who knew exactly what she'd just triggered. You see, when I signed that document, Section 9D of my contract activated a silent protocol across 4 federal databases, an invisible tripwire. Every active certification funded by the company, my certifications, immediately queued for automatic revocation. Not just expired, not just suspended, nullified. At 8:47 p.m. that night, my phone chimed with a confirmation email, "Your authority over licenses #RN9247A66, #FD3301B89, and #MDR6194C03 has been formally relinquished. Entities dependent on these licenses will be marked non-compliant in 48 hours unless reauthorized by a certified replacement." I didn't forward it, didn't screenshot it, didn't even acknowledge it. I just sat in my apartment, sipped boxed Pinot Grigio, watched reruns of Jeopardy while the digital noose started tightening around Blake's precious progressive trajectory, and I slept like the dead. Thursday morning started with a whisper and a very expensive realization. At 9:17 a.m., procurement tried to confirm delivery of pharmaceutical-grade sterilization equipment for one of our healthcare clients. Equipment you don't even look at without multiple signatures and a contamination protocol. The supplier's response, "Cannot fulfill delivery." Receiving entity listed as non-compliant. License RN9247A66 revoked. Contact certified authorizing officer. Guess who that was? 15 minutes later, the system started hemorrhaging alerts. Login attempts failed. API connection severed. A scheduled data sync to the DEA's compliance portal returned an error message, "Invalid license holder." That same hour, our internal licensing dashboard, once as pristine and green as a golf course, started lighting up like a slot machine in Vegas. Red warnings, inactive flags, credentials marked orphaned. Blake, ever the smooth-talking diplomat, strutted into the operations bay with a to-go cup from some trendy downtown cafe and said, "We'll just update the contact information." One of the compliance analysts, poor soul named Trevor, tried to explain. "Sir, contact updates require certification reauthorization." Veronica was the authorizing officer legally. Blake blinked. "So do it anyway." She was the only credentialed officer with reauthorization privileges across all active domains. No one else is registered with the Federal Compliance Registry. And the re-registration process, it takes months. There was a silence. Not the awkward kind, the terminal kind. Like watching someone realize the ship isn't just taking on water, it's already underwater. Blake rubbed his temples and muttered, "Why the hell wasn't I informed about this earlier?" Trevor, barely old enough to have a credit history, replied, "Veronica was the one who informed people about that." Meanwhile, I was at home in yoga pants eating off-brand granola and reading the entire chain from an encrypted email thread a former colleague had discreetly blind copied me into. Someone even included a screenshot of Blake's Slack message to legal. "Anyone know how to bypass a license expiration flag in the dashboard system?" System. He called it a system. That dashboard had been my masterpiece for 6 years. I designed it to lock down tighter than a bank vault if certain revocation events triggered. It wasn't just bureaucratic, it was surgical. If someone without proper credentials attempted to access a certification, it blacklisted their IP and auto-reported the intrusion to internal audit logs, which they also discovered that afternoon because Blake had tried to brute force his way in. By lunch, the executive team was getting frantic alerts from senior management. "Can we rehire Veronica? Does her NDA prevent contact? Who authorized this termination?" Nobody answered because the only person who could have was too busy deciding between Thai food or pizza for lunch. Spoiler, I ordered both. That evening, I opened LinkedIn and checked the old company page. Still proudly advertising, federally certified across all operations. I almost felt sympathy. Almost. Instead, I smiled because I knew by Friday that lie was going to cost them more than just credibility. The seeds were germinating, and the vines were constricting. Friday morning arrived with sirens nobody could hear, just the soft ping of a calendar notification and the thud of panic settling into Blake's organic oat milk-filled stomach. FDA randomized site inspection, 11 a.m. It was legitimate. Random, yes, but randomized within a window Veronica had always prepared for, quietly, annually, color-coded spreadsheet cross-referenced against vendor contract terms, renewal cycles, and the orbital patterns of regulatory satellites if necessary. The auditors didn't negotiate. They arrived with clipboards and the moral authority of IRS agents in bulletproof vests. By 10:34, the reception desk called compliance, "For inspectors here." "They're requesting the license holder." Silence. Long, suffocating silence because there wasn't one. Blake, now visibly perspiring through his Navy Brooks Brothers blazer, sprinted to the legal wing and barked at the paralegal staff, "Can we get Veronica's credentials reinstated?" A junior associate Googled license reinstatement process like it was a WikiHow guide for assembling furniture. Meanwhile, Blake attempted logging into the Federal Credentialing Board's portal using Veronica's old login credentials. Access denied. He tried requesting a password reset. User not found. He called the Regulatory Board's helpline, got transferred 4 times, then listened calmly as they explained, Veronica Nash voluntarily relinquished her licensing authority. Her profile has been removed from the registry. Reinstatement requires complete recertification. Average timeline, 8 to 12 weeks. Blake stared at the speakerphone like it had just insulted his ancestors. He turned to HR. "What clause did she use to revoke her credentials?" They rifled through her termination paperwork, bewildered. "We just processed standard exit documentation. We don't know anything about credentials." Someone from audit interjected, "Wait, didn't she have a custom clause in her employment contract?" That's when the room collectively remembered Veronica Nash wasn't some obsolete compliance clerk. She was the foundation. And they had removed her like a load-bearing wall with a sledgehammer. Meanwhile, across town, Veronica's phone buzzed. It was Kelly from documentation, a decent person once, the kind who brought homemade cookies for audit week and used to leave encouraging sticky notes on Veronica's computer back when the universe made sense. "Veronica," Kelly's voice trembled. Did you do this?" Veronica stirred her coffee, gazed out the window at nothing in particular, then smiled. "No," she said calmly. "You did." Click. She didn't slam the phone down, didn't raise her voice. That would have been giving them too much satisfaction because this wasn't revenge. This was mathematics, cause plus effect equals you terminated the wrong damn person. The auditors were now occupying the lobby. The company legally couldn't escort them into the restricted areas without a licensed compliance officer present, which meant the inspection couldn't proceed, which meant every single vendor and client relying on certified compliance for active contracts would be in technical violation of agreements in approximately 6 hours. And Veronica, she was getting a pedicure. Ocean blue gel finish. Not because she had to, because power doesn't need to announce itself. It just has to withdraw. Monday, 9:23 a.m. The building smelled like burnt coffee, nervous sweat, and the quiet desperation of a company that just realized it had severed its own lifeline. That's when he walked in. Harrison K. Caldwell, CEO, Florida tan glowing like an overcooked turkey, silk shirt still wrinkled from whatever Caribbean resort he'd just abandoned. The man exuded wealth, sunscreen, and complete disconnection from reality. He glided through the glass lobby like a Roman general returning from conquest, waving at security guards, pointing finger guns at department heads. "Morning, team. Hope y'all didn't torch the place while I was gone." Nobody laughed. By the time he reached the executive floor, he had 7 unread urgent compliance emails and a voicemail from legal that concluded with the words, "catastrophic non-compliance scenario." At 9:47 a.m., he burst into the operations center expecting minor turbulence. Instead, he walked into a 5-alarm disaster. Operations paralyzed. Vendor shipments suspended. Inspections failed. Certifications invalid. Clients furious. Revenue projections flatlining. He surveyed the room of bloodshot managers, jaw tightening. Who's managing this crisis? All eyes pivoted toward Blake, who now resembled less of a visionary and more like a middle schooler who just flooded the cafeteria with expanding foam. Harrison pulled up Veronica's termination documentation on a wall-mounted display. Read it in silence, then scrolled some more. Finally, he said it quietly at first, like he couldn't believe the words as they formed, "You fired the license holder." Blake opened his mouth, closed it. Harrison's voice didn't escalate. It descended. Fired the person with exclusive federal licensing authority across all operational divisions. Blake stammered, her responsibilities were deemed redundant. Harrison laughed, but not like humor, more like discovering your house was built on quicksand. He gestured at the screen, her name is on every regulatory document, every active license, every renewal pathway, every legal compliance chain this company requires to function. He opened a manila folder legal had rushed in with, "Here are our top 7 suspended vendors. All contracts frozen due to expired authorizations." And here, he tossed a document onto the conference table like dealing cards, Veronica Nash listed on every single one. Harrison spun back to the room, "And you let some kid who still speaks in corporate buzzwords fire her." Blake attempted one final desperate play, "I thought we could reassign the responsibilities. The documentation said we could just update contact information." "It's a federal license, not a damn email subscription," Harrison thundered. Silence. Then he grabbed his phone, searched for Veronica's contact. Nothing. HR volunteered, "We attempted reaching her. She's, unresponsive." Harrison sighed, collapsed into a chair, massaged his temples like the sunburn had crawled behind his eyeballs. Then get her back. Blake coughed, she might not want to return. Harrison looked at him like he was a cockroach crawling across a designer loafer. Oh, she'll return, he said. We'll pay whatever it takes. Name a conference room after her if necessary. But deep down, even he understood. The woman they'd discarded like expired milk now controlled the keys to their entire damn empire. And she wasn't standing at the gate anymore. She'd constructed another fortress, and inside every blueprint they were scrambling to recover, her name was still etched in permanent ink. Justice didn't shout. It just watched the guilty hemorrhage on their own balance sheets. By noon, Veronica's inbox contained 8 messages flagged urgent from H. Caldwell at caldwellenterprises.com and 1 voicemail from an assistant named Preston, who sounded like he hadn't slept since Wednesday and might be considering selling plasma for negotiating leverage. The subject line on the final email, immediate return requested, CEO priority. Veronica didn't open it immediately. She finished her leisurely brunch, avocado toast with poached eggs, side of perfectly crispy bacon. The satisfied silence of a woman whose adversaries were now conducting emergency meetings under fluorescent lights while she basked in the gentle hum of a home espresso machine. Across the city, Harrison Caldwell was pacing his executive suite like a caged tiger forced into telemarketing. Blake was now Associate Project Coordinator Level 3, which is Corporate 4, sit down, shut up, and don't touch anything that requires a password. His standing desk was replaced with a wobbly hand-me-down. His monitor downgraded to a 17-inch relic. The only thing agile about Blake now was the velocity with which he got thrown under the corporate bus. Harrison had legal draft a proposal to Veronica within hours. Consulting position effective immediately. Contract term, 8 months minimum. Reduced base salary but substantial performance bonuses promised. And naturally, a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. No social media, no interviews, no statements to regulators, total silence. The offer arrived wrapped in digital silk and a groveling cover letter. Veronica, we acknowledge the essential nature of your previous contributions. Please consider this opportunity to help us restore operational excellence. We are prepared to be extremely flexible. Let's rebuild together. Harrison. Veronica reread it 3 times. No mention of an apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, just veiled desperation dressed in executive attire. She composed a response. Subject, immediate return requested, CEO priority. Harrison. I appreciate the offer. Genuinely. Unfortunately, I don't return to burning buildings, especially ones where I was thrown into the flames for optimization. As requested, please find attached. Highlighted copy of my signed termination agreement, Section 9D. Official confirmation of license revocation from the Federal Registry Board. Screenshot of your company's certification dashboard taken 96 hours post-termination. You'll notice my name still listed, grayed out, irreplaceable. Wishing you compliance and clarity, Veronica Nash. No dramatics, no ultimatums, no negotiations. Just receipts. She clicked send and exhaled, not like a woman mourning a lost career, but like someone closing a vault they'd designed, installed, and locked from the outside. Harrison read the email in silence. Didn't forward it, didn't reply. He just leaned back in his leather chair, eyes fixed on that grayed-out dashboard screenshot, and for the first time since stepping off his private jet, he understood they hadn't just fired an employee. They'd excommunicated the one person who understood the scripture. And Veronica, she wasn't praying anymore. For weeks later, LinkedIn nearly crashed. There she was, Veronica Nash. Hair professionally styled, smile confidently sharpened, dressed in executive navy like a woman who came to conquer. New position, Director of Compliance Strategy, NextCore Solutions. The post was brief. No hashtags, no humble brags, just, grateful to join a team where expertise isn't considered expendable. Below it, 2 lines of polite devastation. NextCore Solutions secures medtech industries and bioadvance contracts, citing uninterrupted compliance competence as the decisive factor. Those were the crown jewels, two biggest clients her old company had featured in every investor presentation. The ones that now packed their contracts and left after hearing their certification backlog had hit indefinite reactivation timeline. Internally, NextCore didn't have to sell aggressively. Veronica arrived with the licensing architecture in her head and an industry reputation that couldn't be manufactured. The simple fact that her name had once secured 8-figure vendor relationships was enough to tip every negotiation. Meanwhile, back at her former workplace, still stuck in regulatory purgatory. The dashboard never turned green. License appeals choked in bureaucratic quicksand. Legal penalties were arriving daily, some automated, some hand-delivered like hate mail from regulatory gods. Vendors abandoned ship. Clients panicked. The office Christmas party got cancelled due to budgetary realignments. And Blake, he didn't even get a farewell cake. Just a 5-minute Zoom call and a quiet transition plan that read more like an obituary. One week he was barking orders in an open-concept workspace. The next he was updating his resume with vague nonsense like strategic operations consultant. As for Veronica, she had her own corner office now. Floor-to-ceiling windows, Italian espresso machine, a chair that didn't creak when she existed. Every morning she monitored the alert feeds from her industry networks like someone checking weather reports for storms she'd already outflown. One ping, then another. Her old company flagged non-compliant. License status, pending indefinitely. Audit failures under appeal. She took a sip of her coffee, Colombian dark with a dash of vindication. She leaned back, calm and centered. Above her desk, pinned to her monitor with a silver thumbtack, was a single white sticky note. No signature, no emoji, just 6 words written in steady block letters. In case they ever forget who mattered.